What's up, friends? Today is time for episode 2 of Duel for Spot, the segment where I go on Twitter and YouTube and I ask you your unpopular takes and opinions about Black Desert Online, and we have a chat. We see how many 5 heads we get and how many actual good stuff we get in the comments. Let's start from YouTube. Chmat says, a general debate I've seen, especially this year, is that video endgame is or is not PvP. Well, video is a sandbox game, and in sandbox games, endgame is whatever you decide in a way. This is definitely something I kind of agree with. I do think the only endgame that video has to offer is PvP, the only decent endgame, because everything else kind of sucks. Is the PvP good in video? That's a question for you guys. Hydro says, are Sorks always complaining that their class is weak? Yes, that is a minimum requirement to play Sork. If you don't complain, you're not a good Sork. Switching to Twitter, we have at Anfield W, never heard before, says, I think it's time to update Libers to have the same accuracy as Bex. Since evasion is so hard to make effective, now you also have the added issue of 25 accuracy less than the DR counterpart. It's time passives were rewritten so the players choose evasion, DR, HP accuracy instead of gifts. This is actually one of the first times I hear this take. It's kind of hard to really answer because anything that would indirectly buff Mystic is something I don't want in the game. And this would definitely, very directly, buff Mystic. This also kind of makes you wonder how PA is going forward with the game. If Fallen God armors, like Helmet and stuff like that, are gonna just be Bastion's Law. It's kind of like for the chest is right now, and Black Stars slash, Dandies and Zarka. Offing players, I'm sorry, you're wrong. But, having those, you don't really have a choice in those things. The only choice you have left kind of is in the offend and the armor weapons. Even the offend, you don't really have a choice. You either go Blaster with Nuver or you go somewhat more tanky-ish with Kutum. But yeah, what do you guys think? Should the Liber be buffed? Not selling my Discord account says, I think Nova is fine. Nova is not fine. Nova is in such a weird state, the way I see it in the game right now, because they did the weirdest changes. And this kind of also applies to Sage. They removed the iframes from Sage, and they pretty much made Unguard slower to acquire as a Nova. So they kind of did not address the real issue of Sage, which was the damage, and they made Nova, which was so reliant on the Unguard, even more boring to play. These two nerfs were probably the worst done nerfs to any class in BDO history, because one kind of almost killed an entire class, and the other one made a class that was so reliant on specific cooldowns even more reliant on those cooldowns. When you have Unguard, the class is broken as fuck. When you don't, it's not as much. So it's like, you can only complain every minute and a half, kind of. But I don't think it's fine. I would rather have Nova maybe be a bit stronger without Unguard and more average without Unguard than in its current state. And Flexbus Finley says, oof, that's a long take. I'm here to share my hot take in great detail, supported by facts and logic. Sage needs iframe back, okay, well, and I will elaborate why. Look at Lan, they have a better grab and iframe. Look at Assassin, they may get CC'd out of every dash, but at least they can be CC'd out of iframe dashes. Look at Sork, they have dashes and iframes and even both at once. Corsair have more range, a grab, mental support animals and iframes. Guardians have the same range, twice as many grabs. Not really, Guardian has only one grab. Infinitely more iframes and stronger visuals. Ninja Kuno have more iframes, cooler dashes, better range CC, and can go stealth. Better range CC? I don't think so. I mean, Sage Lightning Prison with Core is probably one of the best mid-range to range CC in the game. Zerker, Striker, and Mystic have all more grabs and most likely other cool stuff we don't have. I mean, I'm always up for hating on Striker, Zerker, and Mystic. All of their classes are irrelevant for this comparison for a larger variety of reason. PS, give iframe back. As I was saying earlier, I do agree the Sage iframe nerf was kind of, I think it missed the point. Instead of making a class viable, from broken to viable, because don't get me wrong, Sage was incredibly broken, they made a class from broken to shit, and that's not a good approach to balancing the game. I think the best way to nerf it would have been just lowering the damage, maybe removing a CC, I don't know, just anything but the iframe nerf. I think I was pretty dumb. But here we are. Wise says, modern BDO is very different from 2016 to 2018 BDO. The multitude of content accommodates for a larger player base, but it also marginally divides it, so the community aspect became worse. It's not the game I fell in love with anymore, I miss the simplicity. That's an interesting way of ending the sentence, because I think BDO back then was a lot more complex. It was quite harder, information was harder to access, everything was hidden. I don't think it was simple at all. Maybe everything being hidden made everything more simple, but I do agree with your point that the community is maybe the most divided it ever was. It's really hard to pinpoint on why. It's probably a mix between how the game evolved and how communities also evolved. At Spider FFS says, instead of giving us the free pen or guaranteed pen, they should just remove downgrading, and blowing up your gear is a stupid system. Maybe my unpopular opinion is that announcing or the announcement system in BDO is not as bad as people say. I think it's actually what kept the game alive for so long. It's probably the reason for the game's longevity. It's because it's artificially slowed by the announcements, by constantly going back or constantly having to try. And we've seen the insane speed of progression nowadays because of that, because of how easy it is to progress with inflated money per hour and free accessories, pen accessories and other pens. But at the same time, in MMOs, in progression MMOs, you want to have new players come in, and if the barrier of entry is way too high, you don't have new players coming in. And I think that slowly kills a game. Maybe not that slowly either. And we really need people to play BDO. We need people to come back and play the game, and they're not gonna come back and play the game if it's gonna take them 6 months to just get an upgrade, and even that upgrade is not gonna make them compete with the veterans. At BDO Ileara says, elephants shouldn't have to run for people because they melt instantly. I mean, elephants probably do run from poachers, so I guess it's quite realistic. But that's it for today's episode of Duel for Spot. Let me know your hot take and unpopular opinion about BDO. Let's get enough for episode 3. But for today, that's all. See ya next week. Kisses.